Welcome to another episode of Trident Talks. I'm Gareth Davis. I specialize in helping early and growth stage vendors build their go-to-market teams. And today I'm joined by the legend that is Dave Rushner, who is head of product and marketing at Revenge AI. So in this episode, we'll focus on the exciting things that Revenge AI are doing, the challenges they solve, what the future of cybersecurity looks like in a world of AI. And me and Dave actually met for the first time on the flight out to Black Hat and DEF CON to Vegas. So we'll delve a little bit deeper into everything that we learned there. So yeah, Dave, let's get into it. Do you want to introduce yourself, give a bit about your background, and a brief intro to what you're doing at the moment?
Absolutely. Gareth, thank you so much for inviting me to come on this. So my name's Dave Rushmer. I've been in the industry for about 15 years now. I started out doing large-scale cyber analytics for ISPs. I have led and been part of teams around the AV space. So I worked for Silence prior to their acquisition by BlackBerry as a POC engineer, one of the best jobs I've ever had. Um, and then that, transitioned naturally into threat research and the wider piece, moved from there into more behavioral side of things and then back into management. And then, yeah, I left my career there, decided to go out on my own, work with small companies, building out threat research teams and threat intelligence pieces, and then decided that I'd come on full time with Revenge AI to do product and marketing stuff for them. So that is my entire history in a nutshell, right? 15 years summarized in less than 60 seconds.
Yeah, cool. And what's the core mission of Revenge AI and the problems that you're solving
Mm,
right now?
great question. So the core mission of Revenge AI is to identify malicious capabilities and vulnerabilities in the software supply chain using artificial intelligence, right? So we build functional models that allow us to have a deeper insight into the way compiled software works. That's the best way to describe it, right? I think ultimately there are a lot of companies out there that will monitor your supply chain kind of left of compilation. They look at when you're coding something, whether you're introducing a vulnerability or you're introducing something you shouldn't be. What we do is we take everything after compilation and find out whether the compiler's introduced anything, whether those third-party libraries you've pulled down that were already compiled contain something that is a vulnerability. And the beautiful thing about all that is it actually works across the supply chain as well as malware itself. So one of the big things that we're able to do is provide more in-depth context around a particular malicious binary that might have been picked up by an AV engine than you might get naturally. So for reverse engineers, it allows them to answer questions more quickly around, what is this binary? What is it doing? But at a deeper level, it helps them identify at scale functions and changes across different binaries and pieces of malware that allow them to focus the their efforts on stuff that only the human beings can do.
Okay. And how is it that you're maybe kind of leveraging AI in a way that potentially stands out from competitors or perhaps, the status quo?
Yeah, interesting question. So, I mean, we're the first company in the world to make functional AI models for reverse engineering
Okay.
of binaries, basically. Some of the cool things we have in the platform that I don't think anyone else is offering at this moment in time. I'm not going to say that they're not offering, but it's
Yeah.
at this moment in time. We have a fully working AI decompiler, so we can turn what is effectively assembly back into usable source code, which is pretty big because it means that we are able to identify vulnerabilities in the source code that may have been introduced by the compiler.
Okay. So who is your ICP and your ideal customer profile? Like who would you say that Revenge AI is best built for?
Great question. I mean, it depends on how far down the rabbit hole you want to go. The product supports reverse engineers and vulnerability researchers. The depth and breadth of the product supports that space really well because we get down to everything at a functional level. But at the same time, the way we've constructed it, the overviews and the extracted capabilities mean that even a software engineer who's never done any reverse engineering or even a line manager can understand whether their binary is malicious or contains malicious capabilities. You know, one of the neat things we've added more recently, and it's quite tightly controlled for a very good reason, is the ability to detect 0 days in your product and find 0 days in your supply chain. And we're keeping that quite tightly controlled because, as you can imagine, if we're able to at scale um, produce new 0 days for software and we were just giving that to everyone, we'd probably get in a lot of trouble. But really, yeah, you know, the product as a whole is designed to help the enthusiast through to the hardcore reverse engineer, but also the the software engineers and the managers to understand what's happening in their environment. For the simple fact that the supply chain as a whole is built on unshaky, unverified trust. We trust companies to say, oh, well, what you're providing me conforms to the ISO 2700 standard.
Hmm.
Um, you know, or I pulled it from a trusted repository. So there's going to be nothing bad in that, of course, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So we're just trying to help basically solidify that space and make sure that people truly know what they're running in their environment, right? Like stop trusting and start verifying.
yeah. And this is a bit of a side note of a question, just from your answer there.
Hmm.
I recorded a podcast previously on who is to blame when that supply chain gets compromised, right? Is it the vendor that deployed the code, or is it the consumer that is using the product, right? So, do you have an opinion on maybe who is at fault, or who is that most responsible?
It's that's a difficult one, right? Because
Yeah,
if it was written maliciously, then it's the person who created it. If it was written in ignorance, then potentially the person who created it. If it was done with the best of intentions and they've taken every step possible, then should we blame the consumer? You know, the person who ingested it into their supply chain to then hand to their customers. I think at the end of the day, what we need to accept is that the protection of the supply chain is an everyone problem. The same way we've been harping on about for years that, you know, security in a corporate environment is everybody's job, not just the members of the security team. The supply chain is no different.
yeah. I think that's a good answer to be fair, because the podcast that I joined on, they kind of alluded to the fact that it's likely the vendor's fault for deploying a vulnerable product.
Mm,
But I think, from your perspective, where you've maybe sat on both sides of the fence, I
yeah.
think what you've summarized then is pretty
Yeah.
accurate. That it's
I
everyone's
think when
responsibility.
it comes to the reason why people want to cast blame is because you know, it comes down to whose insurance is going to pay for the problem. And at
Yeah,
the end of the day, it needs to be the problem. It's the person who has the weakest OPSEC, in all honesty. If you have not tested your code and you've not done what you're doing, then you are at fault. If you are a supplier who has blindly trusted what you've ingested and sent it out, then you're at fault, really.
Mate,
Yeah,
we'll
definitely.
move into Black Hat and DEF CON, right? You were
Oh
you were in
God.
DEF CON, I was in Black Hat. Obviously, we met each other out there, and
Mm,
yeah, we spoke for a little bit. So, talk to me a little about kind of the cool things that maybe you saw at DEF CON or Black Hat. What were some of the standout
mm.
themes or trends that you noticed this year out in Vegas?
Interesting. So I actually did make it onto the vendor hall for Black Hat for a little while to wander around and see what was going on. Um, I mean, there's a big trend towards AI, right? All the companies are have some form of they're either talking about agentic AI, they're talking about their own AI products, they're talking about the way they integrate with AI. You know, it's not so much a buzzword as an acceptance of a new capability, right? Everyone talked about automation, now everyone's talking about AI, which is great. I'm a big fan of AI for obvious reasons. Um, I think, you know, the supply chain protection is a growing business. Given the size of it, the scope of it, and how much money it generates, I can understand why. Um, Really, the other big takeaway is just the behavioral monitoring side of things, right? The protection of the endpoints and the users from an identity perspective. That was one of the biggest takeaways I saw. I think DEF CON had a completely different mindset of what people are up to because it's a completely different conference. But from a Black Hat perspective, those were the kind of big ones that I saw on the vendor floor.
Okay, yeah, cool. And were there any like particular going back to what you did at DEF CON then? Because I know that's where you spent the majority of your time. were there any particular talks, tools, or maybe like demos that really blew your mind that you were a bit like, I knew people were doing this, but I didn't know it was this far along.
Oh, damn. So do you know what? DEF CON's like Disneyland. You're not going to get around everything in one go. You had to pick your battles. There was a lot on. I think someone said to me at one point there was 100 talks an hour across the entire space
Wow.
for 2.5 days, right? I mean, it was a lot of villages, a lot of things going on. Um, what was really insightful for me and what I really enjoyed, now I didn't participate in LineCon very much, and that's what they call it when you're queuing for getting into these vendor halls. But there were some really cool and interesting talks. One, there was a whole AI space that was looking at a 2-year problem that DARPA sponsored to solve protection of critical national infrastructure, and that kind of piece. And it came down to these final teams. That was really cool just to get around and see what everyone had built and what they were doing. I really enjoyed some of the talks on OPSEC, and actually like taking what bad guys are doing and working out where they're coming from, what they're doing, and basically flipping the script on bad guys. That was kind of interesting. Um, I think one of the most interesting ones for me from a personal perspective, I'm a huge fan of Scammer Payback and what those guys do. I think it's flipping phenomenal. And they were running the Scammers Village in DEF CON. They had their online version of the People's Call Center, which is awesome. And they were actively connecting people um, to call centers and scammers to try and basically scam the scammers, to waste their time to install any desk so that any desk could track the people, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. It was so much fun. There was so much going on at any one time. It was kind of hard to pick one thing that I really loved. I saw some of the CTF going on. So there were multiple little CTFs going on in different areas. The Bug Bounty Village with Hidden Layer had built some challenges for that. And I don't think anybody solved them. But there was the core DEF CON CTF, and that looked hard as nails. I'm not going to lie. That was, clearly some of the best and brightest gathered in a room trying to solve nigh on impossible challenges. Um, yeah, what else was cool? The Maritime Village, that was pretty crazy, and the whole aerospace village was just insane as well. So it was like a playground for people that love to break stuff.
That maritime and the aerospace stuff is like the dream for a lot of cyber practitioners, right? Because it's not an experience that anyone can kind of get their hands on and try and
No.
learn more about. So going to somewhere like that, I can imagine it'd be pretty cool from a practitioner's perspective that might
Mm.
have never worked in that space previously, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it was a good opportunity to network with people who were already in that space and
Yeah.
enthusiasts and just find out avenues for getting in there. And I say the collective I ran into a group of people that we kept bumping into each other at DEF CON. And that group kept growing with different enthusiasts who maybe haven't worked in the space completely, or some folks who worked in completely different areas.
Mhm.
I'm going to say, there was a guy who does hardware hacking and deals with satellites and stuff, and he knows who he is if he's watching this. I'm not going to name and shame him, but it was a running joke the whole way through the weekend. He was fantastic, and his experience, he was actually able to speak to some of the new people who were interested in it and help them get an understanding of what they should be doing to get into that space.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a lot of what this DEF CON is about, right? Is that networking piece and being able to connect and
Yeah.
speak with people that you would never really get the chance to speak to outside of like a conference like that, right?
I think the beauty of DEF CON was it wasn't sales. It
Yeah, yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
pushing products down anyone's throat. It was people that are passionate about the space and
Yeah,
interested in different things coming together to just nerd out over cool shit. In
yeah.
all honesty, right? Like I met a dude who goes by the name Byte Wizard, and I've got a floppy disk that contains every virus from the 90s that he was handing out as badges. Where else could you go where you could find something like that? So, I mean, it was cool as hell, man. I can't wait for next year.
It's something I emphasize when, 'cause obviously, we get a lot of people that are trying to break into the industry, right? And they'll reach out to us
Yeah.
for advice from a recruiter perspective. And the number one thing I'll always ask people is, how many conferences have you attended? and they say zero. Like I don't know who to
Yeah,
go with.
yeah,
And I'm like, well, that's the whole point. Like you go there to meet people, to
yeah,
network, and it's I think generally if anyone that is listening to this is looking to start out in the industry and doesn't know where to start, I would start by attending B-sides over here in the UK.
yeah.
Also, I'm not going to tell you to go over to DEF CON by yourself, right? Because that'll cost you an
No,
arm and a leg to go there. But there are
yeah,
smaller, closer knit conferences across the UK almost every month, right? So
yeah.
pick and choose where you want to go to. It's
So
not
yeah, I
expensive to go
mean,
to either.
you've got like the Info Security Expo that's run every year. That's free tickets, so you can go there. It's a lot of vendor halls, but
Yeah.
an opportunity to speak to people who might be in that space. And a lot of those big companies will send some of their technical folks along to that for that exact reason, right? They're looking for talent. They're looking for interesting people. You
Hmm.
do have like Black Hat and Mia that's running in London. That's a good one to go to. But honestly, you hit the nail on the head. B-sides. I went to I've been doing this for 15 years and I only went to my first B-sides last year and I'm hooked. I think it is such a brilliant way of connecting with people in the industry. There's a lot of really fun stuff that's going on. They're all over the place and they're significantly cheaper than any other conference I've been to. I think
100%.
the ones for Cheltenham, I think they charged something like £100 for a ticket originally, but that was just so you got a challenge coin and a couple of pieces of swag. If you weren't going to do that, they just released free tickets.
Wow.
So in a lot of cases, these B-sides ones are free because they're paid for by corporate sponsors who want to just give back to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good initiative, right? And it's just a good opportunity for nerds to nerd out,
Yeah.
like you just said, right? And have a safe space to be able to kind of do it under no pressure or
Yeah.
like there's no like
Well,
hidden
you
ego
know,
behind it. It's just let's share some knowledge, right?
absolutely. So when we were out in Vegas, I went to B-sides Vegas while we were there. Um, and I only made it to one talk and one workshop because honestly, the rest of the time was networking and chatting with people. Networking makes it sound so formal. I was chatting to people who have been in the space for a while and people swapping war stories, people just having fun. Um, yeah, that B-sides is definitely a great way of getting into the community.
In going back to Vegas, did you notice like any shifts in how like AI was being discussed or applied compared to previous years? Because this wasn't your first year out in Vegas, was it? You've been previously.
It was. No, it was
Oh,
my
it was.
first year. I've been trying for a long time to get out there and things just kept getting in the way. So, um, I mean, the AI conversation comes up quite a lot. And I was very fortunate that I managed to go and watch a recording of the three buddy problem. And a bloke called Jags who works for Sentinel One said something that I think resonated really well. The cybersecurity industry as a whole it's not been we've been doing well. We've been doing the best we can with the resources we've got. So it's not like we've been winning. We've basically been doing all we can with the people, the tech and all that. AI is a force multiplier and should always be considered as such, right? We shouldn't necessarily be firing people because we've now got an AI implementation. We should be elevating them and
Mm.
reminding ourselves that there are things that only human beings can do. So take SOC Tier 1 analysts. We don't need to get rid of our SOC Tier 1s. We need to get rid of the role, absolutely. But
Yeah,
we just elevate our Tier 1s into Tier 2 and replace the Tier 1 with AI, right? So
yeah,
AI is going to be something that allows us as security professionals to do more and start winning effectively, right? It's something that we should be using to deal with the problems that we've only been able to do the best we can.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think AI is seen as something that's going to eradicate a lot of or create a lot of redundancies, right? But actually, it's going to be an enabler for you to kind of level up, and it'll present that challenge for you to go and learn a new technology or a new skill, right? And
You know
maybe
what? So some companies are going to see AI as a replacement for their workforce. They'll get rid of people, they'll use AI, and then something will go wrong and they go, shit, we need people. And
yeah,
then they realize that their smart competitors have gone, I'll take all the good folks that you've just gotten rid of and I'll give them jobs and I'll elevate them. I'll treat them right. They'll have loyalty to my company and to us, and we'll take care of them because we know that people win business. AI is not going to win business.
yeah. No, I
AI
agree.
is nothing more than a tool utilized by people that know what the hell they're doing. You take a look at reverse engineering. You're never going to be able to to say we don't need reverse engineers anymore. You're always going to need people that understand the output of AI and the models and who can critically evaluate it. And really, that's the way we're going at the moment when it comes to AI. Our professionals and people that have spent decades in the industry are becoming the folks who are able to critically evaluate the output of AI and use it to speed up their job realistically, right? Um, calculators, perfect example. When a calculator came into schools, right? It wasn't that we got rid of it and said, hey, you don't need to understand basic, mathematics anymore. We went, no, we can make maths harder. We can give you harder problems that test your ability to utilize tools to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And really, that's what AI will be. We'll go, shit, we can actually expect more from people and ask them to do harder things because they have something that is able to help do the job faster, do the more complex things, get rid of the boring stuff that they don't want to do.
And was that like the general sentiment that you picked up from practitioners in Vegas? Like, were people more
Yeah.
optimistic or skeptical or somewhere in between? Because I think for someone like yourself that spent so much time in the industry and you've seen a lot of innovation come and go, and a lot of scaremongering that, oh, this is going to replace so many humans, like automation, for example, and now AI. Like, do you think that you've just got this opinion because you've you've experienced this before, right? You've experienced
Yeah.
the new AI plenty of times over the last 15 years. Whereas maybe someone that has just entered the industry maybe 2 years ago is now thinking, oh my God, I'm an L1 analyst. Like I've never experienced this before. AI is going to take my job. Do you think that you've got that opinion of things because you've been through this stage multiple times?
Possibly, yeah. So there's a little bit of rose-tinted glasses, I think, from my perspective. I think the folks that have been in the industry a while have seen these trends happen before
Yeah.
and feel fairly confident with the way things are going when it comes to AI, right? And they will make these predictions. Um, Folks coming into the industry, it can be kind of daunting because they're wondering whether or not there's going to be jobs for them. The problem we're at the moment is when we start to train AI to replace those tier one jobs, for example, and we elevate our tier ones to tier twos, the folks coming out of schools, college, university, they've been geared towards that tier one position, and suddenly those tier one positions no longer exist. And so education will go, well, we need to train them for tier twos. What about all these people in between that have just come out at tier one? That can be a bit daunting for them, but I'd say that there are opportunities for people in that space. There's still stuff that needs human beings. And actually, you know, you can do security in any job, right? Sometimes it's a case of going from a different angle, going for an IT help desk job in a company that needs security practitioners and use that to get your foot in the door and then move internally. There's things like that. But you're absolutely right. I do have a little bit of a more optimistic view. Um, One of the things that I think made me quite sad is when I went to B-Sides Cheltenham, I met some students who were doing a placement year. Um, great, great people, absolutely. And one of them said to me, "Our lecturer said don't go into cybersecurity because there's going to be no jobs left." And that's the wrong thing we should be teaching people. Like, quite frankly, fire that lecturer.
Yeah.
Like they might be top of their field, but if that's what they're instilling in people that are turning to them for advice, then no,
No.
absolutely not. Um, So yeah, it is a challenge. I think there is going to be a little bit of an upheaval, but companies that are not bullshitting about, we're there to help people and are actually there to help people, recognize that and are trying to do what they can to upskill people because they are the next generation of cybersecurity practitioners.
Yeah, absolutely. I was smiling then 'cause, it resonated with me. I met a friend a couple of weeks before I flew out to Vegas, and he was transitioning from a different career, and he was going to go into software engineering. And I said, like, have you thought about exploring cyber? Because there's definitely rooms to grow. Like you can go, like you don't have to just be an analyst. You can there's unlimited amount of niches that you can kind of go down, right? And his response to me was, well, I did consider it, but somebody said to me that there's going to be no cybersecurity jobs in the future because there's so many people already doing it, and AI is going to disrupt the whole industry that it's put me off going down that route. and then he was considering going into software engineering, right? Which is again going to be it's going to go through that transformational change with new
Yeah.
technology being introduced, especially AI, where like you can write code now without even knowing how to write
Yeah.
code, right?
So someone turned around to me at DEF CON and was like, "Oh, don't hate what I do for a job. I do vibe coding." And I was
Yeah,
like, "I have no problem with that. I think you're using the tool effectively
yeah,
to do the shit you need to do."
yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, that's unfortunate that your friend thinks like that. Maybe this is some underlying current where, someone started a rumor so that they can guarantee they've got a job. Because they'll be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
look, there's people going for cyber jobs."
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
there's plenty of interesting jobs in cybersecurity. I mean, you take a look at some of the big AI companies out there. One of the coolest jobs they've got going is threat intelligence on their own AI models. So looking for people who are abusing these AI models to generate malicious code or are doing things they shouldn't be doing, right? How cool is that as a flippant job?
yeah, yeah, you're right. I think everybody that tries to get into cyber is so focused on kind of one or two routes, right? Or three
Yeah.
routes really. Like GRC analyst, they might do ISO 27001 auditor,
Yep.
something along them lines, or they'll go be an L1 analyst, or they'll try and get into pen testing. It seems to
Yeah.
be like them three are the only way into cyber, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not correct,
But
but
the breadth and depth of cyber roles and things in the security space is a lot broader than we're initially taught, right? It's not just reverse engineering, it's not just IR roles, it's not just pen testing. There's secure development, there's SOCs, there's all manner of
loads.
things, and I think people kind of forget that, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. Let me ask a question. If you were going to be starting off now, if you were going back to when you were 17, 18, potentially you might be considering going to uni, maybe not. And you had zero knowledge of the space, how would you how would you spend your time skilling up to go into a position like, for example, right, if you did want to work in a SOC, for example, because previously you would focus a lot on the networking side of things. You might go and
Mm,
do IT help desk to really understand kind of infrastructure and that kind of thing, right? And I still think that's very, very important. But
mm.
how much of your time would you spend on like learning how or reading upon like securing the LLMs or whatever it would be within a SecOps environment?
So I think you can never remove the fundamentals of that role, right? Everything you've described there, you still need to do.
Mhm.
The thing is that AI is going to allow you to learn those things and do those things a bit faster. You can have better action plans, understanding networks, and effectively ask complicated questions to AI models and have them explain to you how those things work. So in fact, you'd be able to speed up your learning and understanding because you wouldn't necessarily have to flick through long ass books that don't always have the explanations you're after. You'd be able to get more articulate summaries and ask questions back almost like you were chatting one-on-one to a lecturer. Because those things haven't changed for quite a while. In terms of the protecting the LLMs, yeah, that's just another module that you need to tack on. And I think having an appreciation for how they work and how they're attacked and how to defend them is something that SOCs are probably going to have to look at in the future. There are companies out there like Hidden Layer and other ones that are trying to protect models, and they're very open and honest about the attacks against said models as well. So people can pick up and learn those skills and understand what to be looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think like a next gen SOC looks like within an AI fully integrated environment? Because
Mm.
I've seen a lot of shift from hiring analysts to now hiring engineers.
Mm. Yeah, I've got no problem with hiring engineers. Don't get me wrong, but the problem is if you ask an engineer to build you a security product when they have no background in security, what you're going to get is something that an engineer thinks is a good idea, right?
Mhm.
It'll be effective, it'll be efficient. Will it answer the security problem? Probably not, in all honesty. And if you're lucky, it'll look pretty. So. In terms of the next gen stock, what I think you're going to find is a reduction in the number of tier one analysts. I think you will see a couple of them who are there to do the job of reviewing the output of the AI. Largely, the AI will be handling the easily identifiable malicious events,
Mhm.
right? In all honesty. you're you will have a combination of people that understand how AI works and understands what to look for when it comes to manipulating and attacking LLMs with prompts and things like that. And then you'll have your more conventional stock analysts who are looking for behaviors on the endpoint. I mean, the thing is you may have two different SOCs, right? Because protecting models is an entire industry and business in its own right. And
Yeah.
then the standard SOC is really just the same as it's always been. But instead of having 100 tier one analysts and then 50 tier two and then a couple of tier three, you're
Hmm.
going to say, well, actually, we've got 100 tier two analysts, we've got 100 tier one because we're processing more data faster. We've already looked and hit the low-hanging fruits with AI, and now we've condensed everything else down into incidents that do need to be investigated with a level
Yeah.
of intelligence. And we can ask questions of the AI, and that'll be what the tier ones are doing. They're asking follow-up intelligence questions to identify whether that incident is worth escalating.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing is for sure, like I do think we'll see socks either get leaner in maybe in terms of numbers, but I think from what I'm seeing, like a lot of the roles that we'll need is people that can interpret the data that the AI is producing, right? You might not be the classic ticket monkey, so to speak, where you're just
Mm,
prowling through false positive time after time. But I think there will be that need for you to be able to understand the data that AI is producing.
yeah. Yeah, and you're always going to need tier twos. You're always going to need people like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there will come a point where human beings don't necessarily want to rely on a machine to make the decision. They'll want someone there to make the decision, or they'll want to talk to someone.
Yeah.
No one ever comes away from chatting to one of those chatbots online and goes, "Oh, that was brilliant. That was the best experience of my life." They go,
Yeah. Yeah.
it did the job, but I'm still annoyed and I want to speak to a real person."
Yeah.
Um, but what you'll probably find is that because of the way things are running and because of the use of AI, teams and people will be able to diversify a little bit more. They'll
Sure.
be able to move into different roles and responsibilities and you know, it might be that organizations that have a SOC are then able to spin up a detection engineering department
Yes.
or a threat intelligence team that historically they've not been able to do because of resources and things like that and manpower. And actually, because they're using AI effectively, they have more opportunity to branch out their business.
Hmm. Yeah, and that was going to be my next question is, like, what role will AI play in the industry in the next kind of 5 years or so? And I suppose that's it, right? It will allow you to broaden your, say, if you're an MSP or a SOC, for example, it might enable you to broaden the offerings that you
Yeah.
currently have, right?
AI will allow you to better define your managed services. Like the security space as a whole will become more managed service centric than it already is, and
Hmm.
effectively allow organizations to, at a reduced cost,
Hmm.
branch out into other areas that, complement their core business models and business offerings.
Cool. And like, what policies or frameworks do you think are going to be needed to maybe safely govern AI in cyber?
Oh, great question. I mean, government's already trying to do that already, right? I think they're already making steps and taking steps
Hmm.
to try and apply governance to AI. But the problem is that it's a tool that is becoming so widely and readily available that it becomes harder and harder. You can put restrictions on enterprise, but I think the challenge is going to be, you know allowing ourselves to be agile enough with this new capability and tool to a point where we don't hinder ourselves when it comes to combating people that are going to use it maliciously.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And I think my final question, and it's one I do love to ask, right? If you could design the ideal AI tool of the future, what would it look like and what would it do?
Um, Generate a crap ton of money and give it all to me. That's what it that's what it should be doing. No, in all honesty, I think the ideal tool for the future, that's a really tricky question, right? Because it's based on what I think the problems are in the space. But I what I'd love to see happen is a tooling that ultimately allows um, individuals and security practitioners, regardless of what area they need to do on, simply focus on the things that they enjoy and the stuff that needs their intelligence and their input, right?
Yeah,
Something that is nothing more than a means of intelligently automating away the boring stuff. Because a lot of people, regardless of what they say, do enjoy work. They hate the tedious, boring bits
yeah,
of the
yeah,
role. So if we can get rid of that, people will be a lot happier in the job, right? I mean, it's a big bloody ask,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I think it's what we're striving towards.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've hit the nail on the head right there, right? You need to create a tool that gets rid of all the boring stuff in
Yeah,
cyber world across different
yeah,
niches of cyber. So that
yeah,
there's boring stuff in each one, but yeah,
absolutely.
a bit vague of an answer. I wanted something really cool, something really technical, but yeah, that's what we're running out of time. So,
Yeah.
Dave, where can people find you and the cool stuff that Revenge AI are doing?
Oh, absolutely. So you can find us at Revenge AI, literally revenge.ai. You can also find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on X or Twitter, as I like to still call it. Just keep an eye out for us, and we'll post links to where we're at.
Cool. And is there any particular type of talent that you're looking for immediately or within the near future that you're always interested in having a
Oh,
conversation with?
I'm always interested in meeting data scientists and people that have experienced interacting at a binary level with files, right? So people that have done reverse engineering in the past, people that have done vulnerability research or malware analysis, and people that have then tried to do something with AI. Doesn't matter whether you're successful, but I like meeting people that have tried to do something.
Cool. Okay, fine. Well, we'll leave it there. Dave, I really appreciate joining. Hopefully, the next time that we meet won't be on a plane out to Vegas. Hopefully, we'll be able to link up a little bit sooner. But yeah, mate,
Hopefully.
listen, I appreciate you joining, and we'll end the episode there.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.